Good morning, Wall Street winners. It is Wednesday, December the 11th, and we've got a couple of news items coming out today we're waiting on. First of all, at 8:30, we have US CPI data, Consumer Price Index data. So that'll give us some insight into what's going on with inflation in the US. And it's often a component of what the US Federal Reserve looks at when they make a decision around increasing, decreasing, or maintaining the U.S. Federal Reserve interest rate. So expected to rise slightly, but keep an eye on it. What we want to see here is no significant variances from expectation. So if it does rise slightly, we should be okay. Ideally, the U.S. Federal Reserve wants the U.S. the inflation rate to come down in around 2% a year, but they're having difficulty in getting it there post-COVID. So it's been high after COVID, primarily due to supply chain issues and increased consumer spending. And it's been slowly coming down, but that's not down near the 2% level. And if it gets down to 2%, which we don't know if it ever will, but if it does, then as it comes down, the U.S. Federal Reserve should also look potentially at lowering interest rates, which they have been doing over the last couple of meetings. We also have the Bank of Canada today coming out at 9:45, I believe, in the morning. And they're predicted to or expected to announce a 50 basis point or 0.5% rate cut in Canada to the Bank of Canada prime rate, and that will help deal with some concerns around the Canadian economy, which has definitely slowed down, as well as the cost of housing, which goes into the inflation numbers in Canada. So we'll keep an eye out for those. You can see on the screen, pretty much green. I mean, the Dow is off 0.05%, but everything's pretty much flat there, leading into those CPI numbers. If the CPI numbers come out better than expected, expect a very positive day today, but also start to expect muted days going forward. As we get closer and closer to the Christmas holidays, trading volumes start to slow down, especially from institutional investors, but even from retail investors. There's less stocks being traded, and it's just a good time to maybe take some profits, go to cash, and sit and wait for that new year kind of excitement. So typically we see the markets rocket off in the first few days of the year or drop significantly depending on where we're at in the economy. Right now, I think having those markets jump is highly likely based on just where we are in the economic cycle and how organizations are doing. One commodity is doing really well today, and that's crude oil. It's up 86 cents, so 69.45. Most of our oil refining stocks that we look at, we'll take a look at in a minute, were in the red this morning earlier, but they have now gone into the green, most of them. And I think it's going to be a pretty good day for oil, especially if it stays above that 69.45 mark. We can also scroll over and see NASDAQ futures are green. You've got the VIX. It's above 14 now, so it has climbed. It was in the 13s last week, and it's now up into the 14s. So we do want to keep an eye on the movements here. Scrolling down to health and retail, you can see that Costco had a great day yesterday. It looks like it's up slightly today. Lulu got hit a bit yesterday, but it's had a couple of phenomenal days after earnings, climbing to over 400. I think that we're going to see a pullback in that one. Continuing through that list, I'm just going to move down because there's nothing that I'm really following or doing there. CNR was off 14 cents yesterday, which isn't huge, but it's down below 151. I think it's definitely in buy territory. If you look at the 1 month here, it hasn't gotten down to its low that it hit on November 20th of call it 148, but it is getting closer to that. If you look at the year-to-date numbers, it's definitely near its low for the year, and then the 1 year as well, definitely on the lower side. So it could be an interesting one, has a good dividend. Going down into oil, you can see that across the screen yesterday, oil was in the red, but the day before, most were in the green. Now you can see in the pre-market, with a few exceptions, most of these are in the green. Looks like we're going to make a bit of a comeback today. So we're just, with oil, it seems right now, we're just in this roller coaster effect where we've found this envelope or trading range and we're just bouncing up and down in between it. So if you can identify where you feel the highs and lows are of that trading envelope, just wait to get in near the low and then sell near the high and just repeat that cycle. And you'll make a decent profit when you annualize that on a go-forward basis. Getting down into tech, you can see it's mostly green on the screen, which is great because it was mostly red on the screen yesterday. You can see here as we scroll down, I'm not going to drill into a lot of these right now. I mean, Google yesterday had an incredible day. Tesla was up $11. It broke out over 400. It's up again in the pre-market. I'm struggling with Tesla and that valuation. I'm not certainly buying in long. I'm not buying any call options. I would certainly think that there could be a pullback in the new year if they cannot continue to meet their production and sales numbers. But we'll have to wait and see. Elon always has a way of surprising the markets in a positive way and putting some spin on things and then distracting them with his other businesses. So we'll see what happens there. Meta came back yesterday. It was up in the 620s the day before. It dropped. Now it came back to the 619s. Looks like it's going to break through 620 again. Google there up $9.43 yesterday. That was a home run. We talked about that last week, the last couple of weeks, multiple times, saying it was going to get to 185, even when it was down in the high 160s. And there you go. Within 2 weeks, it got there. The one to watch today, two of them really, in my opinion, Adobe. Because Adobe announces after market today. I think Adobe, if results are good, I'm hoping it's going to shoot up, unlike MongoDB, where results were good and it fell significantly. I think if we just scroll back and talk about Mongo for a minute here, I think there could be an opportunity in Mongo. I think it definitely found a bottom in the 290 range, and I think it could pop back up into the 300s, giving you a nice little percentage gain there. But aside from that, we've got Adobe coming out after hours. I bought some TSM yesterday when it dropped down to 190. I thought the price there at 190 was phenomenal. So I think that that's going to come back up and be a $200 stock in the next week or so. So I'm going to bank on that. I'm already in the green on that trade, and it looks like in the pre-market, if it continues to be green, that should double that investment or that profit very shortly. Then we get down into finance, and all we're really seeing here is a mix of red and green yesterday, but I think we're finding new lows, not 52-week lows, but we're just seeing that the finance stocks are starting to pull back a bit. And we expected that. We called that a couple weeks ago, saying that they were overpriced and a bit inflated, especially going into earnings in January. Seeing Goldman back in the 580 range it seems like a much better spot than in the 600, 605 range. Morgan's, I think, still overpriced up there in the high 120s. And JP Morgan at 242. Again, I think it's just on the high side. I think there's room for these to pull back. Raymond James at 160 is completely ridiculous, in my opinion. And then you've got a number of others that have price challenges. I think if you want a long-term play on capital appreciation with a great dividend, I'd actually look at TD. I'm underwater right now in TD. I bought into TD in the 90s and have held that for over 2 years now in the red, but I'm making a 5% dividend. So it's not as long as I don't sell it, I haven't lost, but I'm still getting the dividend for income purposes. And I do believe that it will end up being above 100. It's just gone through some very difficult times with the fines from the U.S. for the money laundering scandal that they were involved in primarily the northeastern U.S. So that's where we are today. I wish you the best in your trades. And if you're liking these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button.